You're listening to Transcaster Radio, a podcast about trans life and all that goes along with it. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review. It helps us reach more people, and we greatly appreciate it. Now, here's your host, Caden Taylor.
Hey, Transcasters. Welcome to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. Today, I have an amazing guest, Soraya, and if I say it incorrectly, they will make sure I say it properly next time. Zaman, an accomplished photographer from Australia who currently lives in New York. They're an author of American Boy Project book that launched in April. So go get yourself a copy because it's an amazing piece of work. You can also follow them on Instagram. So let's welcome Soraya to Transcaster Radio. How are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's Soraya with an S, but you know, whatever.
Soraya.
Good. Yeah, you got it. Soraya. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to join me today. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I told them that you're a photographer from Australia and you're the author of the American Boy Project, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
I mean, there's not really much else to say. I'm Australian originally. I've been in New York now for 7 years, working as a photographer and living life here. I'm a tourist.
What made you come from Australia?
Really, it was mostly work and just the sense of adventure. I think also the photography industry in Australia is really great, but it's quite small. So I wanted to kind of break out of a bit of a glass ceiling that existed there and kind of have a career where I could follow photography that I wanted to do and not kind of fit into what people expected you or needed you to do in Australia. So yeah, I mean, the market's just bigger. So I think it was an opportunity for me to live somewhere else and also make money doing something that I love and having an economy and a population to support that.
Yeah. Do you miss it?
I miss my friends. I miss the beach. But other than that, there's not actually, and obviously my family. And outside of that, there isn't actually a lot that I miss. I was just there 2 weeks ago, and I was actually very grateful to get back on a plane and come back because, you know, New York is my home now.
Yeah. How long of a flight is that?
It's 14 hours from LA. So I was in LA prior. So it was, but from New York, it's like, add another 6 hours. It's 19 hours. It's pretty much 24 hours door to door when you leave from New York. But, you know, you just enter this little cocoon of like earphones and podcasts and movies and zone out. And it's totally doable. It's not that bad.
Yeah. I have not flown in a plane that often, so that just seems like way too long for me. I think the longest flight I've been on is 3.5 hours, and I felt like that was an eternity. So that would be a rough time for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a mental preparation, but you just, you know, make sure that you don't watch any of the latest films that are currently out because on the hopes that they might be on the airplane. And
yeah. That's true.
I just drink wine and watch films and curl up in a little ball with like 8 pillows around me and watch. Yeah, so it's kind of like, and no one can contact you because you're flying over the water. So
that's true. That's nice. A disconnect.
Yeah, it's a total disconnect. Exactly. Other than the person who's sitting next to you. But
yeah. Hopefully, it's not a crying child.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're sometimes unavoidable, but I don't mind. Yeah. You know, they're allowed to cry. I don't get upset by that. I have earphones.
That's true. Yeah. All right. So tell me a little how you got into photography. Like, when did you start photography?
So I don't really have like a formal education in photography. I actually have an economics degree, surprisingly enough.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But I always loved taking pictures. And I guess initially I started to use it, or my interest started to grow as escape from my professional office job that I once had many years ago. I made a pretty clear decision to quit my job, and I went traveling for a year. And I backpacked overland from Hong Kong to Cairo, which took me a year. And the only thing that I had really with me was my camera. And that kind of really, installed a love of taking pictures and like meeting people and using using photography as a way to interact with people. So yeah, when I got back to Sydney, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I started working as a photo assistant there, and I learned everything, working with other photographers and working in photo studios and asking lots of questions. And yeah, in 2013, I moved to New York to continue to pursue that ambition. So
Awesome. I've never been backpacking. My fiance and I are getting married in December, and our honeymoon is going to be 2 weeks in France. So it will be the first time I will have been outside the United States. So I would love to go take a year off and go adventuring like that. So I can only imagine.
yeah, it was life changing. I would highly recommend anybody who's lucky. I mean, I had this job that I hated, but it gave me finances to afford to be able to do this. So I feel really fortunate, but it was a totally life-changing experience, especially traveling through places like China. And I went all through the Middle East. I was in Syria and Jordan, and Syria before the war, and in Jordan, and Turkey, and like really just connecting with people and cultures outside of my experience. It really is I really like, it's something I highly recommend everybody do. You just learn so much about the world.
Yeah. I have a friend right now. She's not across seas, but she's doing a road trip here in the United States, and she has been attached to her camera. So it's been fun to see the pictures coming through from her, and just to kind of, you kind of experience it. I'm sure that people kind of experienced it with you after you came back with all the pictures that you had.
Yeah.
It's like pictures are like an experience. So I love pictures. I'm very bad. I'm not a photographer. Not that I'm terrible. I don't cut anybody's head off, but I'm really bad when it comes to remembering to take pictures when I'm out. So I give people credit that are good at it we had our engagement photos done earlier this year or at the end of last year, and they turned out so well. And I think my eyes don't work like that. Like my brain doesn't think of how to, see things in a perspective that, is such beauty you get from a picture. So, which is, I found you on Instagram, and
I don't think you should wait. Let me just say, I don't think you should sell yourself so short. Like, if I showed you some of the pictures that I took were at the very beginning of me wanting to be a photographer, they're pretty bad. So it's like anything, you just keep practicing and you learn and you get better and you find your eye. And it's about just it's a skill. And then what sets other people apart is your being able to bring your voice to that skill. But everybody can learn the skill. I think it's definitely, so don't say you can't do it, because
all right, I won't. I'm a big fan of the outdoors and taking pictures of the outdoors. I spent most of my summers in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina and Tennessee. I love the mountain ranges and things like that. So that's what I like to take pictures of, and so it's fun. But so how long have you been doing photography?
Well, yeah, so I guess
that's going to age you, and I don't mean to do that.
yeah, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I did give a hint when I said Syria, but I was in Syria before the war.
Yeah, you did give a little hint. If the listeners are paying attention, they might catch on to
that. So I've been in New York it'll be 7 years in July. And that's been, working as a photographer. And then I think I was in Sydney for about 3 years, and I started off as a photo assistant. And then it was about 3 years in when I decided to move here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
10 years.
Yeah, a while. So what's your favorite type of photography? Like, what do you like to take pictures of the most?
I don't really have a favorite type of photography, except maybe good photography is my
Yeah.
favorite type of photography. I think photography is really subjective. So it's what it really is a glimpse into someone's mind through their eyes, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly open to different kinds of photography and that showed me something maybe in a different way, or highlight a beauty of something that I maybe don't see in my like world, in my vision. So yeah, I mean, lately I've bought a few books on landscapes that have really beautiful color treatments and kind of a fantasy element to them. And then I also, when I was in Sydney recently for a head-on photo festival that I was a part of, I met this photographer, this South Korean photographer called Yoon Jil Young. I hope I'm saying that right. He didn't speak any English, but he took these incredible images of disabled people in South Korea, and they were so beautiful and tender and dignified. And yeah, so I feel like it's just about seeing things through through people's eyes in a way that maybe you wouldn't see things, and there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah, I agree. What do you typically do? Like, what's your work now? What do you do a lot now?
Right now, oh my
What's your
God, it's
main?
a lot of what I'm doing at the moment is around the book, and it has been for 4 years. I think what you see is really just the tip of the iceberg of what it's taken for me to make this project come to life. I pretty much work on it every single day and have, especially for the last 2 years. The last month has been crazy with obviously things like this, like interviews and answering press questions and doing
Mhm.
some book signings and going to gallery things, and I'm currently working on trying to pull an exhibition together. So yeah, and then obviously having some jobs come in that can help pay the bills also.
Yeah.
I have a couple of really fun projects that I've just worked on that I'm pretty excited about coming out. I just did this beautiful campaign with Netflix about a television for a television show they're coming out that's called Tales of the City, which is a super queer show. It's coming out in June. It's going to be really beautiful, and I thought I was really lucky to shoot the campaign for that. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me where the idea came from of starting the American Boy Project. Was it
Um,
just organically started?
Yeah, look, it really was. It was a personal project to create work. I wanted to create work outside of this commercial photography environment that I'm in, and it was also personal to me. And because I guess that a lot of the work that I do outside of commercial work is around around notions of gender and sexuality. So when I started it in 2016, I was definitely exploring expressions of trans masculinity, and how in my own relationship to that, and my own feelings and journey of gender. So it was seemed like a natural thing to kind of want to pursue through photography. Um, Especially as I identify as non-binary, masculine leaning, and then it kind of just grew from that into something a lot bigger and a lot bigger than me, really. It became about honoring and sharing stories and validating and centering everyone who I met and photographed in an affirmative way, because I saw that it was really necessary and important and missing, um, and especially now in this like political climate where
Yeah.
trans and LGBTQ plus rights are being wound back on a government level. So yeah, it kind of became bigger than myself. It
Yeah.
started off about myself, and then it grew big to be much bigger than that.
How does your identity have an effect, not just on this project, but on any project that you do? Does it have an effect on that or how you see yourself?
Look, I think with this particular project, um, a lot of the stories that everyone shared with me are in some ways my story too, and I could relate to a lot of, especially childhood stories and feeling othered and not misunderstood, etc. So I think that, my identity really did affect this work. And I guess I have an inherent understanding of everyone's journey in relation to their gender, that are in this particular project. So, and in terms of other projects, I definitely try to bring my identity into everything that I do in an affirmative way, whether it's, seeking out work that helps to expand notions of gender identity and advocate for, for trans people and LGBTQ plus people. And if I'm doing work that doesn't fit that, then I bring my own identity to set and make sure that people know how I identify. And, I've started doing small things like asking for pronouns to be added to call sheets. So that's all very clear. And for this, like, even if everybody else on set is cisgender, there's an acknowledgement that there is an existence of people outside of this, like, heteronormative landscape. And so, yeah, I guess those are the things that I'm working towards doing, and trying to bring inclusivity, not just in front of the camera, but across all aspects of the industry as well, from me being behind the camera to the teams that I try to use to, from a creative level right down to like the editing level, etc.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I ask you that because of the, political climate today and the way trans people especially are seen right now. And I have several friends that identify as non-binary, and society sees me as a cisgendered man now, even though I'm not, and I identify as a queer trans man. When people see me and look at me, they see the beard, they see the short hair, they have their own assumption as to how they want to identify. And I think, not that I'm not negating what other people go through, but people who don't identify on that, quotation binary, it's harder. And I think that message isn't out there as much, and I think it needs to be out there more, because they're affected by everything going on just as much as trans men and trans women. And and personally for me, I mean, I remember when I first met the very first non-binary person, and I actually have a cousin who identifies as non-binary, and people don't see their pronouns as, I've had people say, legitimate, because society says that they them pronouns identify with multiple people, not one. And I think society, it legitimizes what your pronouns are and your experience as a trans person on the trans spectrum. And I think it's important, not just in your work, but in everybody's work, that we make sure that we include that part of the trans community.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, there's a...
Yeah, that's okay.
Car playing extremely loud music. Yeah, look, it is. I'm constantly getting misgendered, and even amongst people who I know, I still have to remind them sometimes, and they're definitely getting better. But there is this perception, because I guess that I still, look, quote unquote, like feminine-ish.
Yeah.
So, it's very easy for people to slip into saying she, her, but for me to hear that is kind of like cringy. So it's a constant battle of existing in your identity daily and kind of like challenging people or reminding people, and it can be really exhausting. But I see it as also important, and I think that I'm kind of a little, I think that, with the platform that I have and being a photographer and walking into spaces where I guess I'm, when I'm on set and I'm shooting, like, I'm the boss. So
Yes.
Like I have a privileged position of kind of helping change people's minds and using that space, and to create change and to open people's minds. So yeah, even though it's exhausting, I think it's a necessary thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. So how did you I mean, if you haven't seen their work, you need to go look at it because it's phenomenal. But how did you go about getting the people that you took photos of for the book?
I found everybody on Instagram,
Okay.
to be honest. So I guess I would sit for hours and go through trans sharing platforms and hashtags. I mostly sought out people who were using their online platforms to express what was happening in their lives in a way that I thought was interesting. I sought out people who were natural storytellers and were willing to share their experiences for good and bad. There was a vulnerability already kind of that was with them. And that really resonated with me. So yeah, I mean, I just reached out over DM to everybody. And I told them what I was doing, and if they wanted to know more, to email me. And then I shared some of the images I'd taken, and yeah, it just kind of happened. That's how it happened. I have this US map that I have above my desk because I'm not American. So it was really great for me to just like look at a map to locate where people were. And I have like pins stuck in for everywhere that I had photographed, and kind of locations of across the country where I kind of wanted to photograph. So I really wanted to make sure that I also sought out representation from not only just the big cities, but smaller towns as well. Because I thought that it was really important to show and feature transmasculine lives from all across the country, and not just people who are living in New York or LA or San Francisco, or these like places that are typically thought of as queer hubs. So yeah, because I think there's an extra level of bravery required to live as a trans person and exist in small towns where community and safety can be a lot harder to find. But but also show people in these small towns like thriving and existing and carving out beautiful lives for themselves. So yeah, those were the things that led me the most, I guess.
Did you ever think of taking pictures of anybody outside the United States?
I've been approached, but I mean, I would, but it's just, it's called American Boys.
Yeah, I know.
I have been told well, what about South America? And I'm like, well, the project is self-funded, so it's I paid for all this myself. I can't. It's much more expensive for me to fly myself internationally.
That's very true.
Than to just fly to Texas or something.
Yeah. So so what day it launched in April?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. What did you want your image to portray about the trans and gender nonconforming community?
I think these images, they show a glimpse into each person's life at a specific moment in time. Some of these images were taken 3 years ago, but it was still, a particular moment in time in their lives, in their journey. And I guess I wanted to show people's personalities, their honesty, their humor, the beauty, vulnerability, people's strengths. All those really beautiful characteristics that make up a person. And I hope that the work informs and expands upon understandings of gender identity outside of binary in a real and authentic way, and that it challenges people's own perceptions of traditional binary gender roles as well. They're affirmative images. I want everybody to feel affirmed when they see these pictures. And I think there's the essays that go with them that accompany each stories. I hope that these help people gain a better understanding of trans experience, and different perspectives that people might not have thought about or heard about before. And that might help them inform their own journey or help them understand somebody else's journey.
I think they're very affirmative. I don't know what other people think, but I think that they are, because they make them vulnerable. I mean, for me as a trans person, I've gotten better at it, but I've had top surgery, but I feel vulnerable when I have my shirt off and my scars are showing, and it's, I feel like the people in those pictures were empowered by your your photographs. I feel, at least that's what I saw in their face and in their image and their posture, and they felt empowered by it, which is so important for the trans community, because you know we're always pushed down and to the point that we shouldn't feel empowered for our gender and how we identify. So I think that they definitely portray that. And I think that's important in today's society, not just in the United States. I mean, it it is a huge topic in the United States, but it's a huge topic all over the world right now. So, but I definitely think that they do. So,
Great.
um,
That makes me
you
really.
always want it to be a book.
Yes, I did always want it to be a book. It was important for me to take these stories outside of online platforms and give them a more permanency. And there's something so special and also so necessary in being able to see yourself reflected in media. And for that to be, in a book, or maybe it's on television, or like something outside of social media that's a bit more of a formal context. Um, so yeah, I think we're just fed such homogenous views of the world, which is mostly, cisgender, heteronormative, and it's very hard for us to see ourselves reflected back in a way that doesn't feel tokenistic, or like, just like you're a character dropped into something to just tick a box. So yeah, that's, I think that's why I wanted it to be a book, because also it's like with Instagram, like, where's that going to be in 20 years?
Exactly. Yeah.
But a book will always exist, and it's really,
Permanent.
yeah, and it's really marking a moment in time, because I feel like, especially right now, we're living in a time where gender politics is really at the forefront. Like, we're really like making moves and changes on the grassroots level around identity. And I don't know if this time this is in my life. I've never experienced this kind of level of conversation and representation. So it's nice to have created something that will contribute to this moment. And I hope that maybe in the future we look back and at this time as being such an important moment in our history. So yeah, these were the things that drove me to make this work a book. Although I always was like, I'm going to do a book, I'm going to do an exhibition, having no idea what any of these meant that I was saying. I was just throwing them out there.
Yeah.
Didn't know what I was getting myself in for. But no, it feels really nice to see it and hold it and have it exist. And yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's important too that we have permanency um, for things like that, especially for the trans community, that we can go back later, because you're right. Will Instagram be in 20 years? Will it even exist? Well, I mean, we had MySpace and that doesn't really exist anymore. At least, I mean, it might be out there, but people don't really use it anymore. So it's nice to have something that will be there going forward, and it will mark this moment in time and how things were and how they were presented. And so I think it's great. How did you decide on the title of the project?
Actually, it came to me really easily, the title of this project. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just woke up one day and was like, I'm going to do a project called American Boys. And the title, I guess it came from this like thought process of calling out this nostalgic, internalized idea of what American boyhood, or in this case American, but it could replace American with anywhere.
Yeah.
A boyhood, and the notion that masculinity belongs exclusively to cis men. So I'm kind of calling that out a little bit. And I guess we've been so conditioned by society that when we think of American Boy, we have this like stereotypical cis male person kind of plastered into our brain. And so I really wanted to challenge that and unpack that belief that gender identity must align, with one's sex at birth. And I also hope that it challenges people for them to change their perceptions. So, yeah, I mean, that's the intention behind the title. It's like people who maybe don't have an understanding of trans identity picks this book up and sees American Boy, and then they're flicking through, and then they're just kind of like, maybe their minds are open and expanded. So it's a challenge, it's an intentional challenge.
Yeah, that's true. We talked a little bit about, how you found your, the people that you took pictures of. Did you have, we talked a little bit about it, but did you have a list of characteristics or specific things about your subjects that you wanted to make sure was included or represented?
I don't think I did in like a formal sense. Mm-hmm. And I definitely know that 29 people is not an adequate representation of a community by any means. Yeah. And I've always said I'm the first to admit there's more missing from this book than what is included. I think it's a nice representation, but obviously, like the trans masculine community is so rich and diverse and interesting. It's like there's no way that I could find people to adequately represent everybody. But yeah, no, I was really just led by the people who I found. Like, I was really open to just the people who I found and their story, how they shared their stories, and if they resonated with me, and that was my leading thing. I think if I was to be honest, I think the next, if I get to do a second book, I might be more strategic about it. But yeah, no. So I don't know. That's my answer. It was all came from inside. I didn't. Yeah. It wasn't really a formal process at all.
Did this project have any effect on your own? We talked a little bit about it, but did it have any effect on your own identity and how you were dealing with your own gender?
Yeah, I think it had a profound impact on my own gender journey, for sure. I think, during the process of making this book, I definitely solidified my use of they, them pronouns, which I was a little bit wishy-washy with when I first started this book. I was like, I didn't mind she, her in conversation, but if you were writing about me, they, them. And, I definitely affirmed myself in my own understanding of my own gender identity and my use of pronouns. And I learned that from everybody who I photographed. So, it was a really beautiful experience that for myself also. So yeah, it definitely, it was a gift in both exchanges. I think. I personally got a lot out of it also.
Yeah,
they still do challenge me. Like everybody who I've photographed, when I talk about things, they're like, "Well, why don't you do this yourself, Soraya?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should." So it's good. I like it.
Yeah, I struggled with my own identity for a while. So, and I do use he, him pronouns, but I do go back to the they, them. So, it's nice to see that, through this project, you were able to find, essentially find yourself and be able to solidify that, because it took me a long time to get to that point, and to I still get misgendered over the phone. They call me she, her, and it drives me crazy. So it, like you said earlier, it kind of makes me cringe. So but that's awesome. So
look, I'm not a perfect human. I haven't figured everything out. I've made this book, but I'm still on my own journey, and we all are. And the journeys can change and change direction, and that's all okay. And
Yep.
So I think that's an important message to share, that even though I've made, I think that if everybody in the book has also, since I've met and photographed them, have changed. I think, which is why I don't know if you've had a look, but I've been trying to hand over the platform, the American Boys Instagram platform, to everybody in the project,
Yeah.
in for a day, and highlighting in the stories. And a lot of people speak about how they've changed since I met and photographed them, and how their relationship with their identity has changed. And I think that's so important. Like, if you haven't gone onto the American Boys page and looked at those, you should sit there and go through all of those, because it's really, it's important to know that even though this book captures people at a specific moment, that doesn't freeze them in time. That your journey, people's journeys keep going.
Yeah, I think the cis community thinks that, once we transition or come to an identification of ourselves, that we kind of stay stagnant in that place. But I personally think that my journey will always continue. I think as human beings, we always learn something new about ourselves or change. Changing jobs can change your perspective and your journey and the way, something as little as that. So I think that sometimes we are seen as, we transition and then we become stagnant. And I think as the trans community, we don't. I think, you continue to move on and you continue to change. And even though it's only been 3 years, the people you took pictures of have changed. They might have had other things happen in their life. And that, I think that's important too, is that people understand that pictures capture that moment in time, that specific moment in that person's life and how it is at that time. But I've actually enjoyed when they've come on to the platform and talked about how things have been different. And I do come from a smaller town, a very conservative town that isn't that easy being a trans person, let alone being an LGBTQ person in the community. So it's important to show that our journeys continue and that things change. Like I said, I go back to the they them pronouns. It's kind of like a back and forth for me. And and who knows, in 2 years I might say, this is how I want to be seen, and go with the they them and non-binary, because I've never fully 100% identified as a male, but I certainly don't identify as a female. I think it's important for everybody to know that their journeys are different, and then they should be okay with the fact that things might change, and embrace those changes.
Yeah, and I think it's also nice to acknowledge to not, maybe you don't need to rush either. There isn't this need to rush, or put pressure on yourself. I think just come into everything when you're ready. And I think that's a nice healthy way. Don't live up to other people's expectations of where you need to be on your journey, and allow it to change.
Yeah, I agree. I did that in the beginning, and I kind of rushed the process, and there's part of me that regrets that, because I didn't really get to enjoy the first part of my journey. And so I would tell everybody, take your time. Don't, definitely don't rush it. So let's talk about what's next. Have you thought about doing a project about trans women?
I've been asked this question a bunch of times before, and I'm hesitant to say yes, because I guess it goes back to your question about gender identity and how it impacts my work. And even though I have a trans identity myself, I just don't think that I can speak for what it would be like to be AMAB and grow up as AMAB. I feel like that whole thing, I spent my whole youth leaning away from femininity. So I want to kind of leave that space open for a trans woman or femme to occupy. And if somebody wanted to do an American girls or women's project, they would have my support. I would help them in any way I could with like everything that I've learned during my process. I would lift them up. I would use my platform for them. I think that I know I do anything that I can, and I would collaborate with in any way that they needed. But yeah, I think it would be so nice for somebody of trans femme or trans woman experience to create that story for themselves.
Yeah, I understand completely. Yeah. It's definitely different than from the opposite side of the spectrum. So they go through different, things than trans men go through. So yeah, I agree. I think that's important.
Yeah,
do you have any?
It's not an inherent thing for me, like this trans masculinity is so inherent in my being of like understanding. Like I would be the other way would be an interpretation,
Yeah.
and that's
I would feel the same way.
If you thought about trying to take a picture of a trans femme or trans woman from a place of real understanding, could you really understand that experience? I don't know. So, yeah. But if anybody wants to do it, let me know and I'll help.
Yeah, definitely.
I would love to
great project.
Collaborate on that and help in any way that I can. Because I think it's also really important.
Do you have any specific projects you're excited about coming up?
Well, I'm working on the exhibition. I just saw a space yesterday that looks pretty good on Canal Street in New York. The date is June 20th, which is really soon. So
yeah, I was going to say that's right around the corner.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. So yeah, this is the first time I'm publicly announcing that, but yeah, I think that's all going to happen. So that's kind of my next short-term goal. Long-term, definitely would love to do a second American Boys book. I feel like there's so much more to say, and even like since I started this project, the landscape has changed so much, and the people who are being visible and active in the community has exponentially grown. So I'd love to do a second book. And I have a few other project ideas, but I'm keeping them a secret.
That's all right. We'll wait and see.
My intellectual capital, I can't share that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, tell everybody where we can find you and where they can get a copy of your book.
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is my name, Soraya Zaman. I don't know, are you going to print that somewhere or shall I spell?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
No, I will.
The project is at American Boys Project. So they're probably the two main places. You can buy the book on Amazon or on the
That's where I got it.
Great. I think they're on sale there, so that's where I would head first. Otherwise, they're in all good bookstores, and Daylight Books, the publisher, also has them as well. So
all right, awesome.
Yeah, please go. It's just gone into a second print run. The first print run sold out. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we sold out in a month.
Wow.
So yeah, the second print run lands in June. So yeah, there's a few stray copies lying around still, but get your hands on one. Yeah,
definitely go out there and get one. You'll love it, and definitely follow them on Instagram. So, all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And good luck on the exhibition.
Yeah, I'm going to need that.
That's exciting.
It's just another one of those things where you're just like, I've never done this before, but okay, let's try.
It's all right. It will be fun.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. Remember, tune in next week, Tuesday after 10 a.m. for another great episode. Until next time, love life, live authentically, and as always, rise up.
Thank you for listening to Transcaster Radio. Be sure to visit transcasterradio.com to access the show notes and discover awesome bonus content.